The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Chris Ellis from the World Crypto Network.
Hello.
Megan Lords from Bitcoin Not Bombs.
Thanks for having me.
Christoph Atlas from Anonymous Bitcoin Book.
Good to talk with you all.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from Mad Bitcoins. Our top story tonight is Amagi Metals to stop accepting fiat currency. No more fiat. After the end of 2016, Amagi Metals will ask customers to convert their fiat into Bitcoin using an exchange on their site, calling the dollar a paper currency doomed to fail since its uncoupling from gold in 1971. Amagi is one of the first retailers to go Bitcoin only. But it'll not be the last. Chris Ellis, your thoughts?
I thought this was absolutely brilliant. I know it's a bit of a marketing stunt, and some other publications in the space have kind of misrepresented it by saying that they've already stopped taking US dollars. But actually, I think this is a really good idea, and it kind of made me think that maybe more of us should do this. Now, I want to recommend this comment on the subreddit on our Bitcoin. It's a guy called, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, it's RGHO Nomic. And he says that it's a total myth that you have to accept legal tender, at least in the United States. He says the law only states that creditors must accept legal tender as a payment for debt. And so I'm going to post this in the comments below. I'd love to know what other people think about it, but I think that more businesses should actually do this and raise more awareness as to the absolute fallibility of these paper-backed currencies.
Megan Lords.
So generally, I'm pro, the dollar is accepted here sign, and I'm pro, people saying they're only going to take Bitcoin. But I'm a little bit skeptical about this. I'm not going to lie, for a few reasons. And one of them being that Bitcoin, a main selling point for me about Bitcoin is that it's a voluntary currency. I don't want anyone telling me what I have to use to buy their product. So it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I mean, I'm still, of course, pro cryptocurrency, pro Bitcoin. But I don't really like being told, what I can and can't spend in the places that I'm spending my money. I also think that it's not the best move because you'd have to convert your money into Bitcoin through an exchange to either they're running or maybe they're going to go through someone like Coinbase or Bter or something like that. And I'm not generally pro-exchange. This is only going to if they do go through with this plan, which I'm also skeptical about because 2016 is such a long prediction in the future, I'm a little bit skeptical because it would basically, they would have to collect a lot of client information if they're going to be their own exchange, especially if these regulations kind of go the way they do. And it's also bolstering this idea that we need an exchange. Yeah, I'm not, when I first heard it, I was a little bit enthusiastic, but I think this may not be the best choice for them. I think for individual merchants, it's a really good idea, and I think it's a lot easier for an individual to say that they're going to take Bitcoin only. I believe Davi's doing that with shiny badges, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken about that. I think it's a lot easier for an individual, but I think it's a little bit harder for a company, especially with the regulations that they already have to interact with as far as being a bullion business. So we kind of see the same things at Roberts & Roberts. There's a lot of, you got to go through all these money laundering regulations. It's a huge hassle, and I'm not saying that, obviously those regulations are horrible and all that, but I just don't really see this as a super great choice. And I don't know, and I'm kind of leaning more towards this maybe a bit of a publicity stunt, just because it seems a little bit unrealistic to have that prediction so far in the future. But I do wish them luck, and I think it's great as far as getting support from the Bitcoin community. And from I guess an ideological perspective, I'm definitely for businesses choosing to not use dollars anymore, because I do think holding dollars is a political decision. I do question whether they're going to be exchanging those Bitcoins into dollars, though, when they have to buy back their inventory from these larger bullion houses. I don't see the U.S. Mint, for example, taking Bitcoin anytime soon, even as far as 2016. I'm very skeptical of some of the other larger bullion houses also taking Bitcoin, too. So I think it's a good idea, but I think it may be a little bit unrealistic at the moment.
The U.S. Mint is going to be a hard supplier to convince to accept Bitcoin. Christoph Atlas.
Yeah, that would be a bit silly for them to run their own exchange in which they force people to convert their dollars to Bitcoin to give to them that they then convert back to dollars to buy, bullion from other people. So, yeah, I mean, I would say it seems like it's mostly to do with publicity, but I think it's also perhaps a small step in the direction of kind of closing the crypto loop, trying to keep the value in the crypto economy as long as possible. I think that's good. I like it when I see companies that are not only accepting Bitcoin, but they're retaining Bitcoin. I actually care more about whether they're retaining the Bitcoin as opposed to whether they're just accepting it or whether they're refusing dollars, because obviously if they're just immediately selling it off, that doesn't do much good. And of course, people, if they want to buy bullion with dollars, it's not like they don't have a million other businesses they can go buy from. So I don't think that this in and of itself is going to have much of an effect. What I would prefer to see from Amagi Metals is for them to say, yes, we keep this percentage of our Bitcoin at all times, or we're paying our employees in Bitcoin, or we're giving out their bonuses in Bitcoin, all stuff that Overstock.com has talked about. And I'd like to see more companies participating in closing that crypto loop of the economy.
I agree. It's probably mostly public relations, but there's also a little bit of a philosophy with it, where the owner seems to be in favor of sound money. They're a gold and silver company, and now they're only accepting sound bitcoins. So even if it doesn't work, you can see them trying to be first from a philosophical standpoint, and I respect that. Exit question. Will Amagi's business increase or decrease because of this decision? Chris Ellis.
Probably decrease in the short term.
Megan Lords.
I would think it has the potential to decrease. The thing about people who are buying precious metals is a lot of them are very privacy concerned too, so they're not going to be wanting to give a whole lot of information to someone who would be running an exchange.
Christoph.
Yeah, well, they're not actually doing. They're promising to do something in 2016, which is a couple of years away from now, year and a half at best. So I would expect it's not going to have any negative effect on their business in the next year and a half because they haven't actually done anything yet, and probably it will get them some positive publicity from Bitcoin holders, and I'm sure that will be a good thing for them, and we'll just have to wait and see how it actually affects them in the long term. I would be curious to see at this point, out of the people that purchase bullion, how many of them are down with Bitcoin. Certainly the precious metal markets are quite a lot larger than the Bitcoin markets, but that is mostly people trading paper contracts for precious metals. The people who actually understand the importance of not having third parties involved in the transactions, not having risk that's associated with someone else, being, going good on their IOUs to you. Those are the people that are actually buying the bullion, and I would suspect that they would be more ideologically prepared to accept something like Bitcoin, which is in many ways a kind of improvement on gold, a kind of digital gold. And I think that it would be really interesting to see what percentage of those people would be willing to purchase and operate with Bitcoin at this point.
And it might also spread awareness. They might have not just heard of Bitcoin, and then when they go there, they're forced to use it, and they find out it's not that bad. Moving on, issue 2. Coinbase demonstrates the pitfalls of regulatory compliance. According to Reddit, Coinbase is closing user accounts if they send money to Satoshi Bet, a popular online gambling website. Some would say all Coinbase is trying to do is uphold the law, but others would say they've gone too far, sneaking into users' accounts and judging them by what they spend their money on. Megan Lords, do you agree?
So this is the problem you have when you're trusting other people with your money, and when you sign up for Coinbase, it says clearly that they don't support any kind of gambling, that you're not supposed to be using the account for gambling funds. So when you sign up for them, you're agreeing to that contract, and it may not be a fair contract, you may not agree with it ideologically, and I'm certainly not opposed to gambling, but if you sign up for it, you're kind of stuck with it. If you plan to use Coinbase as a service. I don't agree that they're doing that, but this is also on Coinbase too for falling under these regulations. They're trying to be as compliant as possible, and unfortunately that's going to put off a lot of people who were using Bitcoin for other things that Coinbase is prohibited by law from engaging in. So I think if they continue to really try to be compliant with regulations, it's going to hinder them in a lot of other ways too. And I think you're going to gradually see people moving away from Coinbase, maybe for some other reasons also. But unfortunately, that's a side effect of trying to be super compliant with these regulations.
Christoph, Atlas.
So in the coming months, one of my focuses is going to be on trying to improve Bitcoin privacy, because I've been hammering at this away for a while now, but it really hasn't changed. Bitcoin privacy still kind of sucks. You have to jump through all these hoops and use a lot of different tools and go through a lot of the technical challenges to anonymize your Bitcoins. But the way that most people are using Bitcoin is not very private at all. This is one of the reasons why I'm so interested in privacy-centric altcoins, such as Darkcoin, the CryptoNote altcoins, X11 coin, or I guess it's called X currency now. All of that stuff. That's why I'm interested in it, because they are examples of cryptocurrencies that have an improvement in the model of Bitcoin when it comes to private transactions. How is that relevant to this Coinbase story? Well, the first question that comes up to me is, how the fuck does Coinbase know where I got my Bitcoins from? How do they know it came from a gambling site? That must mean that they're doing some analysis of my prior transactions in order to obtain this information. That probably is due to some combination of a lack of privacy practices on the part of the gambling site. It may be that maybe they need to publish these addresses in a semi-public or very public fashion because of the design of the way that the Bitcoin gambling works. I don't know. I've never used one of these websites, but obviously they are tipping Coinbase off on what Bitcoins are coming out of this gambling ecosystem. And from my perspective, I'm a big believer in people's right and privilege to financial privacy. And this is not something that I think Coinbase should be capable of doing. I think it's very important that, look, a company like Coinbase that wants to continue to grow, and their model is based on regulatory compliance. If you give them the opportunity to do this kind of analysis, to say, okay, well, look, we can tell that there's this bill that you handed us. It was stamped by the casino. The law prevents us from allowing you to hand us this dollar bill and do business with you. So as long as that we continue to stamp these Bitcoins with all of the signatures of what we're doing with them, these companies are going to have to say no to them. They're going to have to put boundaries and violations of violate their privacy and all this other stuff, so long as that is their business model. And that's the business model for companies like Coinbase, BitPay, etc., for the foreseeable future. So the only possible response to this is to improve the technology, make it so that it's not possible for them to hand this information over or to say no to our Bitcoins based on where they're coming from, because they simply don't know that. And so I think this is something really, really important for the Bitcoin ecosystem to focus on and to improve, and something that I'll be focusing on for sure in the coming months.
I agree, Christoph. It sounds like a technical fix might solve this problem. If the gambling websites are exposing their QR codes and Coinbase is writing them down, all they have to do is change the software, so you have to log in before you get the QR code. It gives you a custom one each time. I don't know. I imagine they'll be able to work around this pretty quickly. Chris Ellis, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with all of the above and everything that's been said so far. I'd also point out that actually this is quite a common clause in most online businesses. I think Facebook and Google both have similar anti-gambling clauses. You're not allowed to advertise on Google, for example, if you're like a gambling site, things like that. So this isn't really to do with the US regulation, which is what the Reddit article they were citing mostly was concerned with in the comments, and that's what that article was reporting on. So I would say that's a little bit of a stretch.
And again, it could just be the tip of the iceberg with these gambling websites. When are they going to draw the line? Are they going to say porn's no good next, or online this, online that, other things that you buy? I imagine Coinbase transactions were used with the Silk Road. I'm sure researchers could figure that out and expose Coinbase for their hypocrisy.
But at least we know now that they're covering the taint of these addresses, right? The Coinbase has now exposed the fact that this is part of regular business practice.
And they've definitely exposed a clear comparison now between them and blockchain.info, which leads us to our exit question. Do you prefer Coinbase-style wallets where they can see what's in your account and who you're sending money to, or blockchain-style where they can't? Megan Lords.
Oh, of course, blockchain style. I mean, it goes against the whole premise of being your own bank when you're letting other people go through your transactions and you're giving up all of your privacy. I mean, people just need to stop using Coinbase, as far as I'm concerned, and especially any other any other exchanges who are saying that they want to comply with regulations, because a lot of them, I wouldn't even be surprised if they were taking further steps to invade your privacy just to be compliant with regulations that haven't happened yet, too. I mean, I really am distrustful of Coinbase.
Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, much more about the private solutions whenever possible. I do use BitPay and Coinbase for particular use cases, but try to avoid them as much as possible. And you have to wonder too, if you don't require them to cash the money out immediately, if you don't immediately need to convert to dollars or vice versa, then it's not clear what people are getting out of using a company like Coinbase to hold their wallets. They give up their privacy, and a good percentage of the time someone hacks into their account and empties out the wallet anyway. So, to steal Blake's catchphrase for a moment, what would you people say you're doing here exactly? It's the worst of all worlds for those kind of situations.
And their new vault system is not a very great improvement either. All it is you'd have to hack 2 email accounts instead of 1. So again, hackers, that's 2 email accounts instead of 1. Very difficult. Chris Ellis.
Yeah, which is exactly how the credit card companies do it, where they have to keep adding a new factor. Now you've got to put the 3 digits on the back of the card as well as putting in your name and address, and that's all they're trying to do. They're just trying to make the wall just a little bit taller, and all it does is eliminates maybe 2 or 3% of the criminals, because most of the better ones just keep going after it. The question was yeah, it's plainly obvious. No, I wouldn't use it, because all you're doing is trading convenience for security.
Reminds me of the Music Man. Moving on to issue 3. BTER hacked. 50 million next stolen. Update on last week's story. BTER didn't attempt to find the hacker. They attempted to pay them. BTER sent off 100 bitcoins to the hacker, but the hacker wanted 110. The hacker responded coyly, "The deal is off. Good night." Since then, Next has tried to hard fork the blockchain to remove the stolen coins, but less than 5% of users have switched over to the updated blockchain. Sounds like a real mess. Christoph Atlas, your thoughts?
Oh man, they really screwed the pooch on this one, huh? Wow. So they don't get the Next, they don't get the bitcoins back. I saw some comments on this article, and I thought someone pointed something out good, which is, why would you just send them the whole 100 bitcoins all at once? Wouldn't it be like, okay, I send you 10, you send me X number of Next back, and we keep doing that back and forth, so that, because what kind of integrity do you expect out of someone that just stole from you and all of your customers? What is the guarantee that they're going to do good on their promise? That's a real problem for people that entangle themselves in this kind of situation. And the only solution for an exchange like this is to do their damn homework, to secure the funds in the first place, so like this type of situation cannot happen. That's really what the focus should be on, and not these ridiculous things they're trying to do after the fact. After the fact, it's too late. Forget about rolling back the blockchain or buying them off or or hunting them down or all this other stuff. I mean, they, this exchange is going to do what they can do, but the rest of the exchanges should be looking at them and thinking like, oh crap, we really need to prepare for this type of eventuality and prevent it from happening in the first place.
And as ridiculous as it is to send them 100 bitcoins at one time, if they wanted 110, from a contract perspective, they should have sent them 110. They gave them an obvious out where they could say, you didn't send us what we wanted, so we're not going to do what you wanted. They didn't fulfill the contract. Chris Ellis, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, these exchanges are the worst thing about this whole industry, and I don't know when we're going to learn our lesson. I really don't. I thought the best resource that I could find to wade through the mess was this Reddit post. I know we seem to be reporting from Reddit full time now. I don't know why we just don't make everything about Reddit from now on. But this seemed to have the most insight on it that I was able to discern. There was a whole kind of clusterfuck. Oh, that's the address where the guy got his, his stolen NXT to. And then there was like a clusterfuck on the NXT forum. And bear in mind, it wasn't even their fault. And to their credit, they didn't go with what Verycoin did, with a very, very rollback and a very, very dishonest way of running a coin. So they kind of at least did the right thing as a coin. They did as much as they could. But yeah, the whole thing just seemed like a real mess to me. I didn't really follow. I found it hard to follow the story because I just kept hearing lots of different things from lots of different quarters. So all of the customers got their money back. Is that right on the exchange? That's what I've just heard when I've been reading through that. That BT said that they were going to pay everyone back, so they're the ones that have taken the hit. Because if that's true, then that's the best outcome. That's the lesson to take away from this.
And BTER takes a double hit. They lose the 100 bitcoins and all the NXT, and then they're paying back customers. So maybe even a triple hit, depending on how much.
And it was their fault. And so that is the way it is.
And it is incredibly ironic that NXT already has a decentralized exchange built in, and that's part of their model. But again, it's a centralized exchange, a central location, fixed fortifications where it was hacked. Megan Lords.
So this is the problem with exchanges, and it looks like they really need to beef up their security practices and be extremely careful. And I keep seeing conflicting reports of like it says at the top of this Cointelegraph article, all but roughly 8.3 million NEX have been returned to BTR. So it says presumably thanks to undisclosed negotiations, but I'm having a hard time verifying this story. If that's the case, then that's really interesting.
That was on the subreddit that I'm going to post in the comments now. That seems to bring some clarity. Apparently they had some leverage because they had some IP addresses and stuff about the hacker.
That might have been a previous story before they had the deal, and then when the deal fell apart, I'm not sure if they got the coins back. It's unclear.
Right, that's what I'd like to see, is a little more clarity in general in this situation, because yeah, it doesn't seem like the news has been updated, for a couple days now. Yeah, I mean, just a really, really dangerous situation, really, really horrible too for Nextcoin. And it's just one of those things, like, you really, really have to be careful with these exchanges. And I do think, like, giving the hacker 100 Bitcoin before any kind of agreement or delivery on things was a poor choice. But after a huge hack like this, people may not be thinking logically about these things. They may just be in a panic to try to, restore these coins to their rightful owners. So it's just watch out, be extremely careful out there.
Exit question. What can we learn from this mess? Christoph Atlas.
Keep your stuff off exchanges as much as possible unless you're actively trading those funds, and the exchanges need to step up to the plate and figure out whatever is necessary to do a cold storage or a cold storage analog in the case of NXT, and do the stuff that we've known about for a year or two now in terms of securing customer funds. There's little excuse at this point.
Chris Ellis.
Yeah, that we should stop keeping our funds on these centralized scams. Someone in our comments, Roger Moore, is saying that the thief gave back 43 million NXT.
It's not bad. Megan Lords.
Yeah, I think Chris and Christoph said the same thing. I'm going to say don't trust these exchanges because it's rare that that any were returned is astonishing to me, honestly. I mean, usually once it's gone, it's gone. So yeah, don't let the fact that any were returned somehow, you know, give you faith in exchanges of any kind. That's not the case when these hacks happen. So don't trust exchanges.
Moving on, issue 4. New York extends comment period for Bit license proposal. 45 days was not enough for the New York Department of Financial Services to regulate the truly unregulatable cryptocurrency, saying that New York can't risk getting Bitcoin regulation wrong. Super Nintendo Lawsky, he of the quad monitors, impressive but still running the default Windows XP rolling green hills background, depressing, is still dedicated to being the first, and thus wrong. Will another 45 days help? Will they suddenly understand that Circle's Jeremy Allaire and many other Bitcoin business owners were not kidding when they said they would ban all customers from New York? Lawsky laughed, but do they really want that to happen? Christoph, Atlas. All right.
Yeah, so this is more astroturfing. It's more feigning interests on the behalf of the regulators. Oh, we're just getting all these wonderful ideas, and we're reading them very carefully. We've got a team staffed round the clock that's going through each letter and putting them categorizing them carefully, pile by pile, based on the feedback that we're getting. I'm imagining probably a giant pile that's got the category called trash can. But yeah, so I think that they're posturing about whether they're getting feedback from the community or not. To me, I don't care about this. It's words, and I don't believe it whatsoever. But I think that the language that we use to talk about this story is very interesting. And right now, I'm seeing that Bitcoin news outlets are allowing people like Benjamin Lawsky to set the narrative and to choose the language that we're using. And I think that is very unfortunate. They keep quoting him saying, "Oh, we need to make sure that we're going to get this right." I think that if we take a really careful approach to this, that we're not going to stifle innovation. These are ridiculous statements. The relationship between regulation and innovation has been well understood by economists for a long, long time. Clearly, Mr. Benjamin Lawsky has not, bothered to read any of these texts. As I'm still going to keep saying this, I've been saying this for a while now. Benjamin Lawsky is partially personally responsible for the Mt. Gox catastrophe because he created a regime uncertainty in the state of New York where there are many entrepreneurs, many investors, many people already with deep experience and knowledge in the finance sector who could have launched competing Bitcoin exchanges in the state of New York, but did not do so because of the regime uncertainty that was created by the organization that Mr. Lawsky is the head of. So he is therefore partially responsible for the lack of competent competitors with Mt. Gox before they collapsed and they exposed their lack of experience and capability. So that's one thing. So the idea that he's going to stifle innovation or that he's going to slow down the rate of progress, it's not a hypothetical. This is something that's already been taking place in the state of New York for years. I've talked to many new entrepreneurs who have told me personally, yeah, I was going to do this thing. I've been living in New York City and I'm stalling my plans, or I'm changing my game plan, or I'm waiting until I can move out of the state before I actually launch my business because they're concerned about the regulatory uncertainty there. And as for them, getting it right, this is something that cannot be done by government regulators. They can't get it right. They're pretending that they're going to regulate stuff that hasn't even been invented yet. I mean, that is a completely insane thing to propose. Where is there, in their proposed regulations, where is the mention of distributed autonomous organizations? How are those going to be classified? Zero mention of DAOs. How are they going to deal with computers that are handling funds, trading them all over the world, where there are no human beings involved? How are they going to deal with driverless cars that are accepting payments and funneling those around? There's no mention of these these concepts that are extremely important. I'm working on a review of the dark coin code now. How do you deal when the cryptocurrency that people are using, the software automatically has people's funds mixed together. They don't actually need to click any buttons. They don't need to direct the software. Just by virtue of using the currency, it's mixing the funds in an untraceable way. How do the regulations deal with that? Also not mentioned in the proposal. So the idea that they're going to be able to do this is just completely ridiculous. I mean, I'm getting the image of a 15-year-old Benjamin Lawsky who, he decided that he was the official soccer referee for the state of New York. And then he walks up to these kids, they're playing basketball, right? And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to be the referee here. I'm the official soccer referee for the state of New York." And they're like, "Well, we're playing basketball. It doesn't matter. It's got a ball. It's close enough. I'm the guy." And then they start playing, and he's like, "Offsides. You get a free kick. Penalty shot." And they're like, "Dude, what the hell are you talking about? This doesn't apply to what we're doing now. You don't understand what we're doing. If you've only ever played soccer before, there's no way for you to understand what we're doing." And this situation is infinitely worse than that, as completely ridiculous as that situation would be.
Basketball would be a much different game if you couldn't use your hands. Chris Ellis.
They want the monopoly on enforcement. We had this conversation with Megan on her show, Crypto Convos, the other day. I encourage you to check it out. So this is where Bitcoin's regulation lies. It's called the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal. If Nintendo Lawsky wants to, he can come over to GitHub and he can have his say directly if he wants some proposals. He could also, if he wanted to, frequent the SourceForge Bitcoin developer mailing list, and he could have some say in here. But instead, he just trolls us from the sidelines with his PR stunts. So right now, there's some confusion as to whether or not Bitstamp are not allowing certain people to withdraw funds. I want to just make clear here that apparently for most people, Bitcoin withdrawals from Bitstamp are absolutely fine. But it turns out that a few people have noticed that they're not allowing it to certain Bitcoin companies in which the banks themselves they're trying to put the money into have objections to Bitcoin businesses. So the irony here is that a Bitcoin business, Bitstamp, is refusing withdrawals to Bitcoin businesses whose banks disagree with Bitcoin. And this is currently an unfolding event. It's also being commented on this post here. If you look this up, Bitstamp no withdrawals for Bitcoin-related companies, on the service discussion on Bitcoin Talk Forum. And it looks like, yeah, it's isolated to a few people, but look at how all these people are coming together, right? It's not just, it's on Twitter, it's on the Bitcoin Talk Forum, and it's also obviously on our beloved subreddit, right? So you've just got lots of people in the last 6 hours, 8 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours, look at all these posts, right? Coming together saying, "Oh, I've got this problem. Did anyone else have this problem?" And then someone else saying, "Yeah, I've got that problem too." Then they're comparing notes. They are the police officers. What these regulators would like is they would like a monopoly on evidence control. They want the evidence in their four walls so that they can decide how the crime took place, so that they can tell the story about how it was committed. Now we're all the police. Everyone can take part in the discovery process. So yeah, I think this is absolute nonsense.
That's a great point, Chris. The only reason we know what happened inside of Empty Gox is because the database was leaked, and then because of that Willie and Marcus report, which was an independent thing that someone just did because they were interested because they analyzed the data. And that's going to be...
And we won't hear from the official authorities about what happened for another 2 years.
Exactly. We've already figured it out. There's incredible manipulation going on, and all it took was the internet standing up to find out what was going on.
Look at what's happening in Ferguson right now. Look at the demands the police are now under to reveal information really, really quickly because the public do a better job of investigating than the police themselves do.
Even they found that witness that was on Twitter. He live tweeted the entire shooting and just point by point. And now we have that as another thing that they have to argue against, more evidence. And that was all time-stamped into Twitter like Bitcoin is time-stamped.
Yeah.
Megan, Lords.
Oh, gee, how kind of Ben Lawsky to give us more time. We can obviously trust him now. I mean, he's shown such care in creating these regulations and such concern for Bitcoin businesses and the individuals who want to use it. I mean, obviously, this guy's on our side, you know. But, I mean, what does it matter if it's 45 days or 10 days or whatever? I mean, they want to control what they want to control, and they don't need any input, and they're not looking at any input. Like Chris said, they could easily engage with the community if they really wanted to, if they actually cared what we think, but they don't give a shit what we think because they don't have to care about what we think. So I think it's really important to keep in mind that these people are not your friends, they are the enemy, and like Christoph said, if you're allowing them to shape the narrative, then that's a part of their control plan too. That's part of you know, them trying to play this as if they're in some like nice middle ground, like, oh no, we just want to help you, you know, acting concerned. It's all an act. These people don't give a shit. Like they just don't care. I mean, that Bitcoin publications are even considering him as some kind of ally or something, or even some of the larger Bitcoin businesses is astounding. I mean, this is someone who's worked in the banking industry for so long and has ties to just really, I mean, if you look into it, it's some really, really disturbing things. So, yeah, this person is not on our side. And these regulations, I mean, anyone who's read them, I think it clearly shows how little they understand Bitcoin just by the way the regulations are written. And some of the appeals that people have been making are actually pretty good. I did get an email of the Digital Chamber of Commerce, I believe. You know, I've been getting their updates, and they sent out, you know, this is the letter we sent to Ben Lawsky, and they were making some excellent points, you know, like these other things aren't regulated, and they shouldn't be regulated either, talking about like Google Wallet and things like that, and basically saying a lot of times over saying, like, you know, it's clear that you're not really understanding this technology, and you're trying to over-regulate things that don't even exist yet. And it's insanity. And to say that somehow Ben Lawsky is showing some kind of concern for the community by extending this commenting period is just insane. I mean, it doesn't matter how long they extend the commenting period, they're going to end up doing what they want to do. And it's not help you or me or anyone else.
Yeah, he's really slimy. I love that point. He's just being a real slime ball. It's called the Delphi technique. You should look that up. It's a technique where you sort of pretend to be empathetic, so that it's like, I'm on your side, I'm listening to your concerns, I feel your pain, but actually it's just a PR stunt, and it's grotesque.
Right, and they've been doing this as long as politicians have been around. I mean, that's what they're paid to do. They're paid to distort things and lie to you and make you seem like they're your friend anyway.
But look, he's not a politician. He's a public servant. Just like this guy that I'm showing here, he was the Iraqi minister of propaganda, and we all remember that during the original invasion of Iraq, this guy was shown all over American TV, and people took him very seriously, and they understood that he was empathizing with the Iraqi people, and that he was completely relating the complete and utter truth because he was at the head of providing information about the military conflict. So why would he ever lie about it? We should have, we should applaud Benjamin Lawsky for representing the honest truth about his concerns about Bitcoin regulation, just in the way that we celebrated this man as a true truth teller.
Very good. Exit question. Given another 45 days of review, the New York regulations will be unchanged or exactly the same? Chris Ellis.
Don't give a fuck.
Megan Lords.
Yeah, I second that. They might make some tweaks or something, but it ultimately doesn't matter. They're going to write what they want to write, and it's going to be terrible no matter what.
We seem to have lost Christoph, but I'll assume he'll say that it was unchanged as well. Moving on to question and answers. There's still a chance to put your question in, but probably not a lot of time, so type quickly. We only have one question so far. From the comments, it says, how many of you agree with Max Kaiser saying that Bitcoin will go to $1 million a coin someday? Chris Ellis.
Yeah, we had this question on Megan from the same guy. Yeah, I just think all these price targets, what do you want to look up? You want to look up anchor and adjustment, I think. Anchor and adjustment heuristic in social psychology. sometimes just known as anchoring. It's also used in behavioral economics. It's basically, if I, for example, if I say to you 20, and then 2 minutes later I say, what's the population of Nigeria? You are more than 50% likely to say 20 million, simply because I got you ready with the 20 in your head. It's totally arbitrary. So the reason is because your mind automatically favors things in short-term memory over things in long-term memory. What Tuur Demeester and people like Max Kaiser are trying to do is they've already got a large stock of Bitcoin investment that they put in themselves. They need that price to go up. They see that they're influential. So if they keep pumping these numbers out into the mainstream, they can get you to make all kinds of forecasts and predictions in your own head where you think, well, if I buy 45 Bitcoins now and it gets to $1 million, I'll start selling it around 700,000, But really, you're just being played because no one can predict the future. So the only honest answer anyone can say is nobody knows.
Megan Lords.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of predictions. I mean, I would love it. Don't get me wrong. If Bitcoin went to $1 million, that would be awesome. I mean, I'm sure everyone's hoping for that, but it's not realistic. We don't really know. I mean, people have been doing the same thing with precious metals forever. I mean, people have been saying, oh, no, gold's going to go through the roof or silver's going to go through the roof. And, if this and this and this happens, then it absolutely has to happen. And, you can't tell. You can't tell. We get these calls at the office all the time. Well, what is silver going to do? What is gold going to do? It's like, if we could predict the future, we wouldn't be working, like we wouldn't be in that business. So the same goes for Bitcoin as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I think there's obvious value in blockchain technology. I think in the long run, you're going to see a lot of people adopt it, and it's going to be used for a lot of different things, but to put a price on it is unrealistic.
Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, I think that price prediction and the kind of short to midterm based on technical analysis, some of that is fine. I actually find Tuur Demeester's predictions or his observations about technical analysis and how the market is performing, I actually find that to be quite helpful. Obviously, they're not guarantees, and they're not. They're just sort of like identifying sticking points in the charts. But as for what Bitcoin's going to be worth in the future, it could be worth $1 million per Bitcoin. Really, that's not the critical question that you want to answer, though, because it's lacking context, right? So if the dollar hyperinflates and you can buy a cup of coffee for $1 million, well, at $1 million per Bitcoin, that doesn't really do you anything. Then you can get a few cups of coffee with your Bitcoins, right? So you really want to not look at what the price is going to be denominated in, dollars, but perhaps in a basket of goods, or come up with some larger economic context for answering this question. It's not about the dollar amount. It's about how is Bitcoin going to interface with society and with the future of finance. I think it's going to interface in a very big way. I think it's going to have a very large market cap relative to other assets. But as for saying it's $1 million or $2 million or $10,000, that to me is not really meaningful information in and of itself.
I agree with Chris. If Bitcoin is going to $1 million, I'm going to sell around 890,000. Got to plan ahead off to that Litecoin thing. So we've got a couple more questions. Andreas writes, as I understand it, you cannot have any association with DAOs under the New York regulation. Have you guys heard this, Chris?
Yep, that's right. You can't do a lot of things with it. And I was going to save it for my news, but I'll just say it now because it'll segue a bit better, I think. So the USA is a federated republic, right? And it's a federated republic that's based on Rome. And the idea of Rome was that you had an empire without borders. And now the US is finally getting its dream because it's got these hypersonic drones that can get anywhere in the world within 1 hour. And so you can just be playing some computer games out there in the Pentagon, and you can just be shooting people, some poor brown people in other countries, because they've got some ideas, like they want to, invade your country or like kill some people. And so you can just go in there on that pretense and start killing people anywhere in the world. And it's the same thing with these regulations, that they just kind of, you can sort of depersonalize people when they're just numbers on a screen. And it's about the US trying to be as pervasive as possible. They want to be everywhere. If you were a Roman, wherever you went in the world, you were in Rome, and you were subject to Rome's laws. And I think the US is trying to create the same kind of domination of the world.
It almost seems like they're future-proofing New York State to make sure that the future doesn't break out in New York State. That's really going to work out well for the people that live there.
Well, they want it to be a template for other countries. They want everyone just to copy this law. They want their laws everywhere.
One of the comments that Benjamin Lawsky made in regards to this whole extending the deadline thing that was just particularly infuriating, right? It was like, well, there was all these people that thought like we're going to have to approve every line of code that they write, and that programmers are going to be subject to this, and blah, blah, blah. And we were really surprised, and we went back and read it, and we were like, yeah, I guess you could kind of see how you could read it that way, but that's not what we meant. And they're treating it as if like, oh, it was like this honest mistake, but no big deal. Like that's not what we mean. You know, don't read what we wrote. Just read what we mean, right? This is infuriating because every day, an uncountable number of people are crushed under the totality of the state by the vagueness of language and the sheer amount of languages out there. There have been law professors who are entirely on the side of the state who point out that there is not a single person under above the age of 18 in the United States that couldn't be indicted for some serious federal crime just because the total number of laws that are out there is uncountable. You can always go out there and find some obscure piece of text that's written on some piece of paper that has been that's rich law that you can apply on someone if they get on your bad side and you're the guy with the gun. That applies to every single person in the United States, and I can only imagine that it's worse in the vast majority of countries in the world. And this is just another stack of paper for someone to go in and find some little technicality or some little interpretation of some vague language to say, oh well, you know what? I had 5 years ago when I wrote this law, I had no fucking clue what a distributed autonomous organization was, but I don't like you, and you did something with these DAOs, and so hey, guess what? You broke the law, so say I. And this is what ultimately these regulations are about.
And you can be assured that their intentions are just golden too. I mean, and another problem you're going to see, when these regulations never really get shoved through, is what's going to happen when the courts start interpreting things creatively. And we're already seeing this with Ross Ulbricht's case and several others. I mean, there have been so many other legal precedents that have been set that have been extremely destructive to your individual freedom. And Christoph's point was really good. I think there's a book out there called 3 Felonies a Day. And I've kind of read, some essays and stuff about it. Basically, there's so many laws in the books right now. You're committing probably about 3 felonies a day without even really knowing it. So that's something you keep in mind when people say there ought to be a law about X. Is there's already quite a few laws out there. Some of them aren't always enforced, and most of them are selectively enforced.
Also especially bad was the end of the article where Lawsky's quote said, "We'll just have to take it a day at a time." So a lot of alcoholism going on here in our Bitcoin regulation. Our next question from Silver Miner: how low the dollar can go is a better question.
Yes, it's a much better question because it's zero.
If you're reading a book like Snow Crash, you see an example of what Chris is talking about with this hyperinflation. The go-to historical example is the wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks that would buy a loaf of bread. And in Snow Crash, she's talking about giving like $10.5 billion, and she doesn't have any bills smaller than billion-dollar bills, and they're still mad at her for bringing in those worthless billion-dollar bills. They can't trade them into other currencies fast enough. And again, they'll be used for fires and starting fires, all the other things, wallpapering rooms. Paper currency has a lot of legacy value, as we saw with the Deutschmark. So.
Well, that's the intrinsic. That's the intrinsic value of the coin, right? Is papering up with the walls and using it to wipe your ass.
It's like a greeting card. Its value is sentimental. It's what you hold it as.
Have you all ever seen any one of those Zimbabwean $1 trillion notes?
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
Not in real life, but I've seen pictures of them, yeah. They look pretty. Apparently tourists actually pay good money just to have souvenir copies that are above and beyond what they're actually worth, just because they like to have a new one.
I actually have some Zimbabwe notes in my desk.
Very cool.
I'm a trillionaire in Zimbabwe.
Right, yeah.
Just waiting for that exchange rate to turn.
You know what
All
you know what this might end up being like? You know how nowadays to pay a bill by post actually costs you more. You get discounts to pay online. I think that's how it could be in about 5 years. It might actually cost you more to transact in dollars. Companies might go, really, you want to pay in dollars? I've got to use the legacy banking system. Someone's actually got to sit at a bank and process this manually. Forget it.
And especially if you're paying through the mail, the amount of dollars you send, the value could go down while you send it there.
Yes.
You're going to have to send more dollars to pay off the bill. It's this perpetual problem.
You know, Thomas, I could sit on those Zimbabwe notes. Starting to feel a little bit like a Dogecoin holder right now.
Says the guy with the Doge in the background usually. What happened to that?
I just haven't put it up on the wall yet after I moved, but it's still here.
It's bearish on Doge.
Poor Doge. Still alive in our hearts. We got a couple more comments. Dan says that he's trying to get his felony count over 3 a day. So he's got to keep working on that. You have to be really enterprising to have that level of felonies. And I'm not sure what Silver Mining's saying, but he says that Mugabe is Yellen's mentor.
Mugabe.
Mugabe, I don't know. But Janet Yellen is the new Fed chair. So there you go. Whatever that means.
Mugabe is the president of Zimbabwe, or the prime minister, one of the two.
All right, I've heard that before, but I didn't know he was related to Yellen. So.
No, he isn't. What he's saying is that Mugabe's giving her advice.
Oh, okay.
She's learned from him.
My head. It was a way homer. All right, so we're out of questions, so we're moving on to predictions or story of the week. Chris Ellis, do you have a prediction or story of the week? You kind of gave it away earlier, right?
Do I? Yeah, I do, actually. Actually, I've got 1.5 stories. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was still following Ross Ulbricht's case. We've had an update today, which is that the prosecution have added 3 new charges to the charge sheet. I'll basically whittle it down. His defense is basically saying the reason they're trying to add more charges is to ensure that they get at least 1 conviction. Like when you get in front of a jury and the jury sees lots of charges, they assume you must be guilty, otherwise you wouldn't have that many charges. So please check that out. This, for the first time, I'd also like to report that Coindesk has actually attributed a source. This is after they came under some criticism for not doing that before. So this article originates from The Guardian, but I did feel that Coindesk did a good job in this case. So the main story is the Gartner hype cycle, and somebody pointed this out to me on Twitter, so I kind of looked into it. And so if anyone doesn't know, the Gartner are like a consultancy firm that advise businesses on the next big thing, and they have this thing called a hype cycle, which starts off with like a really sort of early stage, like bio 3D printing, connected homes, bioacoustic sensing. So it's a very, very early innovation. That technology then reaches a peak of inflated expectations, like a hype. It then goes through a trough of disillusion, and then over the next few years or so, it becomes slope of enlightenment, and eventually it just becomes normal, right? And we just accept it. So this is Gartner's published. They publish this every August, and they try to advise people on what the next big thing is going to be, when you should invest, all this kind of thing. So this year, cryptocurrencies appears just before the trough of disillusionment, everybody. So Bitcoin has had its day, it's over the hill, and now it's going to go through a long period. It's blue, which means they're not expecting cryptocurrencies to be part of the plateau of productivity for another 5 to 10 years. But then I kind of did some digging, and I realized that cryptocurrencies weren't present on the previous year, and they weren't present on the year before that either. So this is actually the first time Gartner have even acknowledged it, despite the fact that Bitcoin was invented in 2009 and was in development in 2008. So this just goes to show that these people know absolutely nothing. Also, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that this article here is mostly bullshit. And if you read it, it just reads like some really old school blog, and they're clearly out of touch. It takes part in what they call a post-Nexus stage roadmap that focuses on the convergence of people, business, and things. So that's just a load of bullshit, and it's just a load of buzzwords, and they don't really mean anything. And so my prediction is that people will continue to make bullshit predictions because the future is fundamentally unknowable.
It's infotainment.
Yeah.
Megan Lords, do you have a prediction or story of the week?
Well, that settles it, Chris. I'm selling all my Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I'm out. No. But yes, I wanted to make an announcement. One of my favorite sources of news, I've been reading antiwar.com since I was like 15, so like a really long time now. They are excellent on foreign policy. They're doing the hard, dirty, horrifying work that no one wants to do when it comes to war, but someone has to do with all of these, with the growing warfare state and all of that, and they really bust their ass. Angela Keaton is a good friend of mine. They're doing a fundraiser. Here's a link to that. I'll put it in the chat for you. They're doing a fundraiser, and Bitcoin donations to antiwar.com will be matched up to a total of $10,000 in Bitcoin. So please support them. I can't talk about how awesome they are enough. Excellent, excellent source of news on foreign policy. They're all over the place too. I mean, they're covering wars, covert wars, overt wars. I mean, a lot of people think that, you know, there's just a few, you know, major wars going on here in certain parts of the world, but there's such a wide variety, and it's a very depressing thing to think about. But they are really putting the hard work in and really busting their asses. Like I said, one of my favorite sources of news. Please support them. They've been taking Bitcoin. They were one of the very first, I think they were actually the very first nonprofit to take, I'm sorry, Free Aid was the first nonprofit. They were around the same time started taking Bitcoin, though. They've been very supportive early on. So please help them out. They could really use the donations right now.
Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, so it's interesting seeing this this chart of the progression of technologies. Now, I've heard of this technology. It's about 100 years old, and it's a system in which you have a currency that's controlled by a very small group of people. They continue to inflate with the supply of more and more of this currency ad infinitum. And they basically get the value derived from the future productivity of the unborn, and it's used to start wars. And I would like to know where fiat currencies lie on this little graph that they have here. Is it in the slough of disillusionment, or you know, where on that line does the fiat currency thing hold up? Come on, because it certainly is a technology, and I think a rather disappointing one as far as humanity goes. But anyway, so the story of the week for me, when you want to look at how well governments are doing, how well regulators are doing in terms of serving the people, in terms of serving the interest, in terms of greasing the wheels of innovation and so forth, what you do is you do not look at the words of the regulators or the government people. You look at how human beings are responding to their actions. And one of the very important measurements of this is the underground economy, which is untaxed, which is you know, cash under the table kind of stuff, and it can, you know, span the spectrum from illegal drugs and guns to just babysitting and contractor work and all this kind of stuff. And what we found in the United States, based on the latest economic analysis, is that from 2009 to 2012, that economy doubled in size. So over the course of 4 years, the U.S. underground economy, untaxed, doubled in size. Let me see if I can just pull up real quick what the size of that was. Underground economy doubles. Yeah, so it's now went from a $1 trillion economy to a $2 trillion economy from 2009 to 2012, just in the United States, which is highly regulated and highly controlled, you know, capital controls and tariffs and all that kind of stuff. And I think that we can expect to see more and more of this growth in the future. Who knows what it is in 2014? We haven't done the economic studies for that yet, but I think we'll see more and more of this growth. As I've mentioned many times before, already more than half of the world's workers are involved in the global underground economy, and by 2020, we'll see at least 2/3 of the workers involved. And I think that cryptocurrencies are going to be a huge part of that future, and we're just going to see more and more of that growth as the iron glove of the state tries to squeeze the people that they're supposedly serving harder and harder, and we slip through their hands and join the dark economy.
Excellent prediction. Chris Ellis, one more thing to say?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Stefan Gillis on Twitter for buying me this cider. Thank you very much. I ended up buying it. I'm enjoying it whilst we've been having the show. I'd also like to say a big thank you to someone who just donated a Bitcoin whilst we're on air to me as well. That's very kind. I actually know who it is, but I'm not going to say in case they don't want me to. But thank you. That was very kind.
Very cool. And now, moving on to my prediction.
Sorry, could I just add one more thing? Sorry to interrupt. To the antiwar.com thing. By the way, the reason they started.
One more thing.
So I wanted to clarify the reason antiwar.com started taking Bitcoin was because they found out they were being spied on by the FBI, and the FBI was trying to get a lot of their information and attacking their donors even, and this scared off a lot of donors, and they switched over to Bitcoin so that no one could stop their donations. And as far as I know, they're still being spied on, so they really need your help, because this is not some like conspiracy theory, like, you know, where someone's sitting with a tinfoil hat, like, oh, the government's out to get me. No, like, the government is actually out to get antiwar.com. So
go ahead and donate through the QR code right now on your screen at antiwar.com/Bitcoin. Moving on to my prediction. Camp Bitcoin is no more. Long live Camp Dogecoin. Dogecoin, Dogecoin, Doggycoin? Meet Mad Bitcoins at Camp Dogecoin at 8:15 and E Street every day at 4 p.m. We'll be joining up with Tom and Gary's decentralized dance party to spread the spirit of cryptocurrency to all burners, because Dogecoin is about fun and Bitcoin is about money. But you can't have one without the other. Oh, we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.